University of Arizona, I'm here. My name is Benny Pough. I'm an author. My book is On Impact, Life Leadership and Betting on Yourself. Real estate investor. I'm also a tenured music veteran. I've worked at 7 different record companies. Started my career at Motown Records. I worked at Perspective Records. I worked at Arista Records. I worked at MCA Records. I worked at Def Jam Records. I worked at Epic Records. And I also worked at Roc Nation Music. But most importantly, I'm so happy to be here with you. Are y'all happy for me being here with y'all? Absolutely. And I'm also the founder of It's Your Time Business and Music Conference, which is geared for the artist and executive. Now, can we do a little exercise? I want you to look to your left and tell a person next to you, it's your time, the other left. Now look to the person to your right and tell them, it's your time. Come on, come on. All right, all right. Now we're gonna do a little thing. Everybody take out your phone, and we're gonna put together a group text to all our creditors, student loan holders, and tell them I'm not paying you because it's your time. Right? For such a small phrase, it's your time has such a powerful connotation. Didn't it feel good looking at someone and acknowledging the transfer of energy into someone else's destiny? Didn't it feel good? Absolutely it does. You know what's quite amazing right now is that I'm so happy to be here during Black History Month. Come on, guys. I want to thank the dean, right? I want to speak Dr. Praise Zaninga, the whole College of Humanities, friends, family, and each and every one of you for being a part of this very, very special event. Come on, give it up. Don't take it light. You know, we could have been somewhere else, but we chose to be here together. And that was the first commitment that we had to do to be a part of this very, very, very special moment. So for all of you guys who've ever watched a hip hop show or been to a concert, let me see a raise of hand. Okay. So you know what time it is, right? You know what time it is? Is when you go, is Brooklyn in the house? Oh, for real? One lone Brooklynite, huh? But you know, why do we actually why is Brooklyn identified as the city for hip hop, right? We don't never go, is Newark, New Jersey in the house, right? Albuquerque, New Mexico, London? No, Brooklyn. But for most people, they don't know that hip hop was born where? In the Bronx, right? Hip hop was born in the Bronx by Clive Campbell, aka known as DJ Kool Herc. And think about it. His ingenious invention of just doing something simple as far as isolating the instrumental of a record and emphasizing on the bass, the break, and going from left to right, hence hip hop is born. Right? Isn't that great? And that shows you too about being intuitive and also following your dreams, right? All he really wanted was to have a hot party. And that created now a multi-billion-dollar industry that transcends across all continents around the world. What would this world be without that invention? And think about it. DJ Kool Herc, he probably didn't monetize, but his purpose was priceless. Do you think sometimes, do you ask yourself, why am I here? I do all the time. I go, self, why am I here? And it always comes back to It's Your Time. Music is the reason why I'm in Arizona. It's brought me all the way here, and we'll talk about that. When I was in college, I went to St. John's University. Let me tell you guys a little story. While I was in college, I worked a lot of different jobs, probably like most of you guys, maybe not, maybe so, who knows, right? I sold cutlery door to door. I drove limousines. I did security at the university. Yeah, I was the guy you'll probably flip the bird at, right? Nah, right? But what was most important, the thing that I loved the most, I was a stand-up comic. And you never know where your opportunities, I was a stand-up comic. I was one of the original founders of the Uptown Comedy Club in Harlem off of 125th Street. And what was really interesting about the Uptown Comedy Club, it was a new phenomenon that took place. For a lot of you guys, you didn't know that this was a creative environment where comics and DJs would come together. So before you came on stage, the DJ would get the club hot. You'd perform, then the DJ get the club hot again. And I'll never forget the moment when Russell Simmons walked in, saw the concept, saw the energy of the room, and that was the moment when Def Comedy Jam was born. He took his small idea in an isolated area and made it a global phenomenon, Def Comedy Jam. So it becomes important for all you guys who have ideas, make sure you trademark them. But what's really interesting though, while I was doing comedy, the national director of Motown Records asked me at the end of the show, what was my plans? What was I doing? I'd literally just graduated that June. She said, why don't you come and be my intern? Now, where I'm from, no one ever said what an intern was, but being a sales guy, I said yes. And I figured by Monday, I'd figure out what this damn intern, midterm, or whatever it was that I said, I'd have it all locked down. So I went down, to Motown Records in New York, which was located on 729 7th Avenue, Times Square. And for all you guys who've never been to a record company, it's the equivalent of a tech company. Everybody's casual, cool, fly. So I get on the elevator, get on the 8th floor, and I'm dressed. I have my 3-piece suit on, wingtips, briefcase only as a prop, looking like the part. I get off the elevator, and I catch eyes with the receptionist. She looks at me, and I look at her, and I can read her mind. And she's like, fool, what are you doing here? You must be lost. Or he's definitely the FBI. But what's really interesting though, first opportunities, I learned always dress for success. Most importantly, bring your confidence. And third, most importantly, no is the beginning of yes in business. A lot of greatness comes out of no when you're in a company. If the finance department tells you, we don't have enough money for the event, make it happen, that comes from no. If the art is delivered for one of your superstar acts or for your page or whatever's creative for the company, no, greatness can come out of that. Or you can be an artist and the song comes in and it's not quite right. No, push it back. That might become a standard. So it all depends on how you look at the opportunity that's in front of you. So from Motown, I went to Perspective. I worked for Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, world-renowned producers, as their head of lifestyle and national marketing. What did that entail? managing street teams, which is the equivalent now of managing a bunch of influencers. I was the first to have that job, and I was ready for it. But what was interesting is the fact that I met some really incredible artists during that time. Sounds of Blackness, which was one of their big iconic acts. Barry White, who was also very, very notable. But what became very fascinating was the fact that I had now stepped away from a big label like Motown Records, world-renowned, recognized, and took a chance on a small startup. And that happens. Sometimes we have to figure out what's best for us. Sometimes you have to see the opportunities differently. Complacency would have happened in Motown. Going to a scrappy startup, that was very viable. So I was super excited about that because, as you know, complacency can become the enemy of purpose. After that, I went to work for Arista Records, which was the Rolls Royce of the music business from an artistry perspective as well as talent. I learned while at Arista about the connectivity of all of the departments because people just look at music. You guys might just look at artists, but there's a whole business behind each of those. And Arista provided the look in on how promotions talk to publicity, publicity spoke to finance, finance dealt with A&R, and how this whole conundrum all came together to make success. While there, had an opportunity to work with some incredible artists. I was doing radio promotions. The late, great Whitney Houston. Worked with Tony Braxton, TLC, Outkast, all the Bad Boys stuff, Craig Mack, Biggie Smalls, as well as really worked with Usher when he was 14 and Monica when she was 14. I was the first one to put her on the radio at WCDX in Richmond, Virginia, is where she broke from. From there, after leaving Arista Records, I went to MCA, Music Corporation of America. And that was my really big shot in the business. But when you're in a corporation, you don't know where your opportunity is going to come from. So it's important for you to know, always be ready so you don't have to get ready, right? And also have an undeniable confidence in yourself. Unfortunately, my boss, he and his number two exited the building. And I was the last man standing. And there was a woman in the C-suite who wanted me to be her SVP, Senior Vice President. I'd never been an SVP before, but she had confidence and belief in me. Now, just because when you're in a corporation, you have the endorsement of one person, maybe two people, but when you're in the C-suite, everyone's not gonna believe in you. And the general manager had no confidence in me, thought I was too young. He thought I was immature or not mature enough for the position, and he just didn't think it was my time. So I'll never forget, in 1998, we were going to the BET Awards in Los Angeles, driving in the back of the limousine, and he says to me, "You're championing a project that the company's not interested in." Now, if you don't get this project, if you don't make it successful, I'm gonna fire you. And then he went on to small talk like, you wanna go to Carl Jr.'s or you want McDonald's or however, right? I'm like, Needless to say, 2 weeks later, I was getting married. So the next call was to my then fiancée and let her know that our honeymoon would be changing. See, what's interesting, you never know where opportunity is gonna come from, but you need to be prepared when it comes. So during the day, I told her I'd work, and then in the evening, we'd spend time together. So needless to say, Jesse Powell, who was the artist, You, which was his song, I showed him. I took it #1. I gave the Roots, while I was there, their first and only #1 record with You Got Me. Common Sense, his first and only #1 record with Macy Gray, The Light. Shaggy, It Wasn't Me. Casey and JoJo, All My Life. Mary J. Blige, the 4 albums after the 411, I worked those as well. And I learned 3 valuable lessons. 3 valuable lessons. 1, I married the right woman, right? We gotta start with that, right? That's a lot. 2, if ever given the opportunity to grow in an organization or be in a C-suite or a senior executive, I would never treat someone the way that I was treated, right? And 3rd, and most importantly, when the shot comes to you, make sure you take it. You can't be afraid as you move through life, as you move through corporation and not believing in yourself, because the opportunity is always going to be around you. It's a matter, are you prepared and are you ready for that opportunity? After that, I stretched a little bit, went from the West Coast where MCA was and went to Def Jam Records, which was an interesting job within itself. Why was it an interesting job? It's because I took a 6-figure pay cut to go work at Def Jam Records. And most people say, why would you do that? Why would you take a 6-figure pay cut to go work for a company? Hold on, I'm gonna get to that. You know, I set that up, right? I'm not just saying it in jest. Because it was my tuition, how I view it, to go work for a closed shop, arguably the best hip-hop label in the world, that did not allow outsiders. Everyone inside, from a corporate perspective, was homegrown. They started as interns, they became directors, vice presidents, and even the president. That's how they did it. So the opportunity to go in and learn the plays was worth me, at that point, taking that investment and betting on myself. During that time, worked some amazing artists, promoted, had LL Cool J. We had Mariah, Lionel Richie, Young Jeezy, Rick Ross, Neo, Playa Circle, Jermaine Dupri, Ludacris, Rihanna, and Jay-Z. And what was really interesting, Jay-Z at the time, not only was he an artist, but he was also the president of the label. And I'll never forget, the big radio station in New York, Power 105.1, wanted him for an morning AM interview. So I asked him. He said yes. And I told him it was at 7 a.m. He was fine. So with premier artists like that, I would take on the responsibility. I wouldn't delegate the hard work or the important work. I'd do that myself. So I figured I'd get there early. I got there at 5:45 in the morning, and he pulls up at 6:15. Now, I've done hundreds of interviews with artists, and I've never had an artist show up an hour early. And most importantly, I've never had an artist for a 7 a.m. interview show up at 6:15, 45 minutes early. But I learned something very valuable at that time, is that highly effective people truly do respect their time. Highly effective people truly do respect their time. And being a superstar, artist, or executive is not a part-time job. It's a full-time career. So it showed me that I wasn't working hard enough. Although my output was at the level I thought I was, there's a whole nother gear inside you. If you commit to what you're doing, that you'll go beyond for what your wildest imaginations can see. After there, I went to Epic Records. Epic Records, I was promoted as the executive vice president of the label. Now, why do I tell you that? It's because that shattered a glass ceiling. There were no black executive vice presidents running major record labels. I was the first. And given that opportunity, now allowed me from starting as that intern all the way up to this moment to use everything I learned to create artists, build executives, and make the company successful. Epic Records also gave me an opportunity to sign some amazing talent. Future, the first Sony billion streaming artist. Yo Gotti, DJ Khaled came through the door, Travis Scott, and 21 Savage. While I was there, after that, had the opportunity to go to Roc Nation Music. We put out 18 albums, which was the first time in the company's history, and give the Carters their first #1 at R&B radio. But during all of this time in the music business, there was a seismic shift in my life. I was in a near-death car accident, and I'd like to read you an excerpt from my book. Is that all right with you guys? Y'all falling asleep or y'all still with me? All right. I want to make sure now. I don't hear you. I got to get it together. Heading nowhere fast. Something told me not to go. It was Labor Day weekend, and I was exhausted from trying to keep up with my own demanding schedule. My childhood friend had invited my family to his barbecue, and I was running an hour behind schedule. Between the severe weather, traffic, and the distance, we would not get there for at least another 2 hours. In view of these challenges, picking up my wife and daughter and getting to his house almost felt impossible. Early that day, I was in the middle of a business call and briefly clicked over to let my friend know that I would call him back. He said that he went to invite me over for a barbecue, and without thinking, I told him that we would be there. I didn't think much about the commitment for the next few days, but had I checked my schedule, my response would have been somewhere between a soft maybe and a hard no. On August 30th, the day before the barbecue, I flew to Charlotte, North Carolina, then drove 90 minutes to Columbia, South Carolina, to attend my nephew's football game and spend quality time with my sister and her family. We then went to Orangeburg, South Carolina, to celebrate our father's 70th birthday with more family and friends. As I anxiously awaited in the airport for my return flight back to New York, on August 31st, a voice came over the intercom to let me know that the flight would be delayed. A few hours after, I was grabbing my luggage and rushing into the city for a midday meeting. The delayed morning flight mixed with my going downtown in the middle of the day threw off my schedule and pushed everything back. I still had to get home to pick up my family before heading to my friend's house. Any of these reasons would have been enough to back out, but I had given him my word, so I kept it moving. I've known him for more than 80% of my life, and I know that he is all about the details. Everything he says has action behind it because he's a planner and a doer. 2 days after I accepted the invitation, he checked in to confirm that we were still coming. The next day, he called again to reconfirm. Finally, he called the day before the barbecue to check in and confirm again. I'd given him a firm yes on each call. By the time I arrived home to New Jersey, a sudden storm had settled into a light, misty rain. I considered driving the convertible, but changed my mind once I realized that my daughter would be in the back and in a vulnerable position. We decided to take the truck instead. Even though we arrived 2 hours late, my friend and his family were welcoming and forgiving. I wasn't surprised to see all the food and serving dishes spread out. However, I was surprised to learn that my wife, daughter, and I were the only invited guests. Now his multiple confirmations calls made more sense. Turns out that the entire barbecue consisted of 4 adults, 2 children, and 3 bottles of wine. We were surprised, flattered, and glad that we didn't cancel. Throughout the afternoon, we talked about everything from family and work to vacations and our health. Later in the evening, my friend and I moved to the rear deck to continue discussing what was happening in our lives. Things that were going well and things that were too painful to mention. As we talked, the light rain began again, and a heaviness filled the air between us. Trying to shift the mood towards something less serious, one of us suggested that we take a ride in his new Benz. We thought it would be a good diversion and inject a bit of lightheartedness as well. Things appeared normal as I followed my friend from the rear deck of the house, through the kitchen, and out the carport. After a few comments about the design and features of his new car, we went into the house to grab a cigar before stepping back out and hopping into the driver's seat. Then I jumped into the car and he and I buckled our seatbelts. As he turned the music on, our families came outside. We smiled and waved at them and backed out of the garage and turned the car around and drove forward out of the driveway, which was the distance of a New York City block. As he approached the end of the driveway, he opened the gate and we made a right turn onto the street. Outside of my window was sprawling lawns, only slightly concealed by gated entrances. The opposite side of the street consisted of a wooden area filled with trees and untapped potential. As we moved along the 2-lane road, I took out my cell phone, intended to make a quick call. A forward thrust barely knocked the phone out of my hand. Out of nowhere, we accelerated. I looked out of the corner of my eye to see that the speedometer was moving past 70 miles per hour and headed towards 90 miles per hour in what had to be a 30 mile per hour zone. What the heck, I yelled, confused. Don't get me wrong, I had done my fair share of showboating in a new car, but we were grown men with families. We had more to lose, and I was not interested in masking recklessness as excitement. When I turned to look at him, he was unconscious and slumped over with his foot planted on the accelerator. Panic, I tried to get my bearings. I shook him and yelled, but he was out cold. As I sat up in my seat, looking back and forth from him to the road, I realized that the end was near. For the everyday person, there is no way to prepare for something like this. There isn't a course that trains you for the moment you come face to face with your own mortality. Most of life is spent doing the opposite, figuring out how to outlive and outlast. It's about fighting every obstacle and using it as a stepping stone towards whatever achievement or goal is in front of you. However, my current obstacle wasn't some trivial thing that barely registered on life's scale of importance. It was the devastating reality of my impending death. It was witnessing my own transition from one life to the next. I wanted to yell and scream, use every ounce of energy within me to get myself back into the house with my wife and daughter. I needed to be in the office working or back in South Carolina with my parents and sister. I wanted to be anywhere but in a luxury car, speeding down a residential street with a passed out driver, and yet all foreseeable conclusion points towards me winding up dead. My chest rose as the air circulated in my lungs, became more suffocating than freeing. I knew I needed to breathe, and I wanted to. But as the car's acceleration increased, so did the truth of what was happening. I squeezed the door handle with my right hand and prepared to brace myself. A stillness overcame me. I thought, what am I supposed to do? Instinctively, I knew my mother had already planted seeds for moments such as this. She raised me to call on the only protector I knew, especially when everything else seemed bleak. Without hesitation, I spoke to God. I thanked him for his blessing in what now seemed like my last moments. Lord, I guess I'm going to see my family again. I guess I'm going to see you soon. You're going to take care of my family? What about my mother? She has Alzheimer's. Who's going to walk my daughter down the aisle? My thoughts were mixed of prayers and confusion. The day before, I was fortunate to celebrate my father's 70th birthday with my family. A week prior, I had dropped off my son at boarding school. Now I was heading forward towards the end of my life. There would be no more birthdays or celebration. A lump formed in my throat as the weight of what was happening came into full view. My family is about to bury me. We sped past house after house, going faster, which each second, as everything became a blur, I gripped my head and considered my options. There was no time to act, and even less time to think. Anger arose from within me as I thought, am I going out like this? God, is it really it? I always figured I'd do something heroic. Is this how it really ends for me? Veering off the road, we clipped several bushes and trees. Every time we hit something, his foot would bounce up off the accelerator, giving us a moment of reprieve before it hit the pedal again. Suddenly, we struck an object in the road. Redirecting our path, the Ben swerved from the right lane across the left and jumped the curb. Once again, I braced myself as the last thing I had was the front end of the car barreling across broken limbs and heading towards a massive oak tree. In that accident, we hit the tree at 90 miles an hour. I sustained a level 2 concussion. That's when you black out between 1 and 5 minutes. L3, L4 vertebrae fracture, bulging disc in my back, lacerated liver, which led me to lose half my blood supply. And we hit the tree so hard that it severed 2 feet of my small intestine. And in that moment, through all of that, God put a book inside of me called On Impact. And impact is an acronym, which stands for intuition, mastery, pivot, authenticity, connection, and teamwork, which are the 6 pillars of my life. And anyone who's ever been in a near-death situation, you know there's several questions you ask yourself. Did I spend enough time with family and friends? Did I actually commit to myself, to my dreams and aspirations? Did my life have impact? Music brought me here. Music has been a defining factor in my life. Music has been the journey that has brought me from nowhere to right here somewhere. And when I think about music, I always think about life, leadership, and betting on yourself. Thank you so much. Y'all ready?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Well, one of my questions was, you mentioned from starting with Motown, really through Roc Nation. I was really interested in knowing more about how the music industry has changed and what are maybe some important aspects that you think are shifts, say, from then to now.
I mean, we could talk about that question all day. I mean, technology is what changes the music business as a whole. I mean, we'd have to start there. I believe when I started in the business, the major configuration, vinyl, right? Vinyl was the big money maker. CD came in, like I've seen it all. CD came in, MP3s, right? And now file sharing and streaming. So what's really important for anybody is to be on the evolution, right? And the upside of how the business is. And that's any business, right? You have to be a student of the game because 30 years isn't by chance. 30 years is, as I told you, it's about setting heights for yourself all the time, consistently, pushing yourself beyond stretching, as I call it.
Well, my question was, how was your relationship with Deidre Tate? Was she your manager was she your mentor along as manager when you went to Motown as the first time as an intern?
Yo, you better not bring out, like, I'm watching you. Like, when we did the interview, he threw a zinger, right? I don't know if he's just like on some for dummies, right? Like, yo, questions for dummies? But nah, thank you. Deidre Tate was the young woman that actually booked me for that show while I was doing stand-up. You know, like I said to you guys, and I was talking to Dr. Zaninga earlier, is you just don't know where opportunity is gonna come from, right? You just truly, you hear about these things, you just need to be prepared. I never knew that in that moment, at the end of the show, getting paid $25, that I would have a 30-year career, right? Would work some of the biggest artists in the world. I just had no idea, but I attributed that to is just always being prepared, working hard, like people used to laugh at me. Like I started in like college promotions and all my friends that were in other labels that were in college promotions, they was out drinking and chilling. I was actually still calling radio stations. You guys in college, radio stations aren't like regular stations. The jock comes in when he or she wants to come in, different hours, you might be calling them at home. And that's how I had my ledger of when to contact people. So Deidre and I, we still actually work together because what's important in growing in any business is always creating your tribe, right? It's not about just getting the opportunity. Your opportunity is for everyone. It's not just yours. And people who only look at opportunities for themselves only become, but so successful. And success, it all depends on how you equate success, right? If it's only about money, then however, right? It's about longevity, growth, and how many people you can bring in. So yes, Deidre is still in my wheelhouse. Good question.
Thank you, man.
You don't know none of my old girlfriends or none of that stuff, do you? I'm like, what's coming up?
Well, what was it like? Motown is really known as this quintessential soul label, and it's kind of a hallmark of black music. What was it like working at Motown?
Motown was amazing. I think had I not started at Motown, my outcome would have been different. Because Motown truly was the black family. And what do I mean by that? And black family, because I'm a black person, but I only say that in respect to equate it for everyone else, it's just being at home, right? So in the black family, as you know, there's a lot of tough love, right? And people say it's for the best of you. I don't know. I don't like my love tough, right? But, I got it that way. And, but they also embraced you. Like Motown allowed me to make the mistakes without the consequence of losing the opportunity, right? So they got my legs strong. And that's what it was really about. And working with such heritage artists, like think about it. I mean, for you guys now, when you think about streaming, all music is now new music. So, because you can just go to the streaming platforms and listen to music when you die and beyond, right? You can have them put speakers in your coffin and music will still play at the end of the day. So just to see legendary artists like Stevie Wonder. I took Boyz II Men on their first college gig down in Virginia. And like at the end of the show, like they were so enthralled that they were doing what they wanted to do that they just spent a moment together locked as brothers in the emotion, and I saw that. So Motown delivered the heritage and the soul for me to be in love with the business of music, right? And I wouldn't take it or do it any other way.
Well, we're going to have some questions from the audience, and I'll read those and see what you guys want to ask. So one of the first questions was, what keeps you consistent with goals?
One more time.
What keeps you consistent with goals?
Seeing them. Like, I'm a visual person. Like I have the, I had the whiteboard before it was a whiteboard. Actually, it was yellow. I don't know how it became a whiteboard. We had the yellow mead. That's important. I'm a prayer, so I pray and I speak out loud the things that I want, and I see them. Like, I just don't talk about it. I gotta see it, right? And I gotta work hard and strive towards it. And I have multiple things, I talk about 2 plan A's. So when I got into the music business, when I started receiving bonuses, I took every bonus for 20 years and bought real estate. So that was my plan A. So I had 2 plan A's, my full-time job and building my real estate portfolio. As I said, I'm a real estate investor because in the music business, there aren't many salt and pepper hair black men walking around the companies. Like, it's a young person's game, and you realize you can go from making $20,000 a year, $100,000 a year, $500,000 or $1 million, and then one day it's gone. So if you don't prepare yourself for what's next while you're in it, then you've kind of like done it all for naught, right? Like, you can't get caught up in just the entertainment of it all because it's a business. And I think people really just only look at one segment of it, and that's only the entertainment piece. Hence why I started It's Your Time Business and Music Conference, to give artists and young entrepreneurs the opportunity to learn the business on the other side of the desk, the 101s, right? Because most artists, when they come in the business, they have no idea, 0 idea. If you think about an artist, the majority of them are the equivalent of lottery winners, right? NBA players, football players. When it happens for you, then you have to get prepared for everything. It's not like you prepare beforehand. If you don't have a checkbook and you get $1 million, how does that kind of work, right? So you don't know how to pick managers. You don't know how to pick financial consultants. You know how to pick lawyers, right? It's all of the basic things that become very important, hence what we want to do and make sure to improve young executives, right? How do you show up for a job? I mean, it's cool that you can be cool, but you can never be wrong with a suit. You just can't. No one's ever gonna look down at you wearing a suit.
Did you know what you wanted to do from a young age? And maybe I'd add on to that. Did you know that you wanted to be in business of some kind?
I mean, the crazy thing, I wanted to be a truck driver. But my mom's, she didn't raise me as a little boy, she raised me as a little man. Disciplined me early. I've been saving since I was 5 years old. Like, my mother would take me, when people used to go to banks, we would walk about a mile from the house. I didn't realize she was giving me exercise. I'm like, why would she park the car and then let's go walk? But she would walk. It was her little routine on connect, dropping them gems, they call it now, right? So I actually had a Christmas club, which was a small denomination of a coupon book on where you would, for savings kind of thing, preparing for Christmas. So they have 50 cents, $1, $5, $10, $25, however, whatever it was, and would force you to save. So now, because nobody had credit cards then, right? Now you could buy Christmas gifts. So I always had that discipline of money. So when the opportunities became before me in business, I kept the disciplines. Now I'm a salesperson, as I told you, by trade. So looking at the music business, it's just a non-traditional product when you think about the music itself, right? You can't touch it, but you feel it. But the artists, obviously that's a different bag. So it just became very important for me on applying all of my business acronym that I learned along the way in order to help benefit up-and-coming executives as well as artists.
All right, so this next question says, pardon the tone of this question, is there a downside to the music/hip-hop industry?
I mean, there's a downside to life, right? At some point, we all check out. I mean, that's perspective. I mean, I spent 30 years in the music business. The music business gave a young African-American man an opportunity to live a seven-figure life, right? Hire hundreds of people, giving them opportunities, right? Traveling the world and giving opportunities along the way, and also having reflection, right, from a spiritual and musical perspective. So I'm the wrong person to ask. I'm sure there's people on the other side who hate it, right? But ultimately, once again, I don't look at the business maybe how some do, because it isn't about the monetization. If everything went away, I still have life. I've gone through something that most people don't have to do. You don't have to hit a tree at 90 miles an hour to understand your purpose. So if your purpose in the music business itself is just to be a part of something great, and you only make $30,000 a year, then you're happy doing what you're doing, right? But I think, once again, to get a little deeper into the question the person asked, it's always about those two plan A's, right? Ultimately, as technology changes, so do the business change. I mean, think about it, guys. During the pandemic, how many of y'all was in school? Yo, that was revolutionary, right? I'm sure there's less effort needed, because think about what happened with the pandemic. All it did was tighten up systems, and you realize what's valuable, who's valuable, and what's not. So in the music business, the same thing happened, right? Systems just get tightened up, but there's always going to be players, and you hope to be one of them.
So how do you know you're preparing for opportunities? It says, going through life day by day, doing what you do, not knowing the future, how do you know that what you're doing is keeping you ready so you don't have to get ready?
Purpose. I'm always ready for the opportunity, and be willing to say no. During my career, I didn't go on every boat. I didn't fly on everyone's plane. I didn't go to every island, right? Because that's not what I was in it for. Why people are attracted to me and how I lasted at 7, you don't know anybody else who's worked, it's 7 different record labels. And the reason is because it was my purpose. My reason for being inside of the music business, as someone who doesn't play music, doesn't write music, right, wasn't the same reason, or perform, was different. So, stay ready, as I talked about early, so you don't have to get ready. Because when someone knocks to give you an opportunity, you gotta be ready. You can't say, can I get to you later? What was I gonna tell my fiance? Yeah, you know what? I decided that I'm gonna leave this job and we're gonna spend that time together. I didn't know that was gonna happen, but that was a test on a lot of fronts. It was a spiritual test, it was a business test, and it was a test for our relationship. So we have a unique story to talk about, as opposed to looking at, I can't believe that job would do that, right? No, you take it for strides and you move along how things are presented to you.
So I have a fair number of budding MCs and producers in my hip-hop cinema course.
Let's go.
I have to ask for them.
Let's go.
If you had one piece of advice that you were going to give to an up-and-coming music artist, what's one thing that you would tell them? You need to do X.
Educate yourself. And what does that mean? It's go to conferences, definitely immerse yourself in information, subscribe to all the trades, Make sure that you're present and find opportunities to perform. Performing in your house in front of the mirror in the bathroom and just rapping into yourself doesn't mean anything. You gotta test your craft. You gotta see if the people like it, not just you like it. Because it doesn't matter if it doesn't sell. You guys saw the article, Spotify is like removing 3 million pieces of content. And the reason being is because now, I was having this conversation with a young kid, and you guys are young kids, so I'm gonna have this conversation with you. People don't understand, like, when there was retail stores, there was maximum of capacity of how much music could actually go in. So the stores and the record labels and every other medium were the gatekeepers, right, for talent. Because if you were really good, you would make it in to transact, to sell. Somebody would bring your product in. Now with streaming, when you think about Apple Music and Spotify and any other DS, everybody can put their music up. So now you've gotten rid of the middleman. You can put it up yourself, but nobody's listening. Right? So that's what I would tell them. Immerse themselves in the business of what they're doing. It's not just art. Now it's business, more so on you than it was before.
How do you think the music industry has changed you since you left? And it's another question. Did your friend live after the car accident?
Well, the last question, you got to read the book, right? That's what the setup is all about, right? I'm selling books here too, right? I'm not just here talking, right? Read the book, and I don't want to spoil it for people. And he was only the driver for the change in my life. So, a symbolism, what that was about. And what was the first question?
How do you think the music industry has changed since you left?
Man, it's, once again, I'm still active. I still have clients. I still stay relevant in the space, but it's constricting. Because once again, if we just go back to the pandemic, right? You have to think about everybody was infected with the pandemic. And now you have to be better, stronger, and faster in the business in order to succeed and survive. It's important and imperative for anybody who wants to be an artist or an executive that you're now prepared. Before it was a lot of social, now it's a lot of business for real, because it's smaller. And when there are less opportunities, then there are fewer people to fill those.
So, as a businessman who's, reached a lot of heights and done worked for 7 different music labels, and what was your most difficult battle that you went through, and how did you solve that?
The most difficult battle for me was just not getting consumed in the music. So, why do I say that? I grew up in a church. My mom's was Sister Janie Pough, for people who, in Black Baptist churches understand what I'm saying. Working hip-hop music was challenging for me because, it was demagoguery, dope, all kinds of epithets and everything. But the thing was, I was the best sales promotion person in the business, so I could get it done. So I always had a pull to, if I got it, I'm going to get it played. And ultimately, the biggest thing is, you're changing the minds of the future with some of the things that is going out there. But also, it's the creative artistry piece of it too. We don't want to censor what creatives put together, because there's also a choice, right? Ultimately, the choice is not mine or yours. The choice is the people on what they're going to decide what they want and what they don't want.
All right. So with that, what would you say was the harder job, working at Citibank or selling fax machines?
You don't really sell a lot of fax machines, bro. That's a hard-ass job. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
What are some of the differences between, say, building on one of the things you were saying there, what are some of the differences then between, say, being in the hip hop industry and working as an exec versus being in, say, R&B and working with people like Mary J. and Monica, Boyz II Men, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the differences, per se, in those two industries?
So you're saying the corporate business itself, or are you talking about?
I think more you as an executive. Did you approach hip-hop artists the same way you approached R&B artists?
Got it.
Was it per se a different perspective and approach you had for
Understood.
genre, so to speak?
So ultimately, dealing with people's idiosyncrasies is what it is, right? You know, you wake up sometimes on the left side of the bed, you're a different person than you wake up on the right side of the bed, right? If you get up 5 minutes earlier versus 5 minutes later, you know, that piece of it is always understanding the art of individuals, right? The business end of it doesn't change, right? When you think about genre specific, there are gonna be different nuances, like promoting a country artist is going to be different because there's just different avenues you have to take them down. Promoting a pop artist is going to be different because you're going to have to take them and expose them differently. Taking a hip hop artist, you're going to have to expose them differently. The company as a whole fundamentally are going to dole out monies predicated on upside, and then obviously the outcome is going to be dictated by the people. So you just have to think about genres is like Ben and Jerry's, different flavors, right? But it all starts with cream and sugar. That's what it is.
So the audience has some more questions.
Let's go.
So, see what they.
I don't have to leave until 6 in the morning.
Did you ever pass up an opportunity that could have been a dream job because you knew it wasn't right or the right time or place or leadership?
Absolutely. So some of you guys might remember Mariah Carey had a label called Crave. Oh, you're young, y'all are babies. But anyway, at Mariah's height, she had a label was called Crave. And the guy who I worked with at Arista, he went to head the label, and he asked me to come over and be his president. Now, I'm a junior cat of the label, and I knew I wasn't ready for it. I knew the opportunity was way bigger than I. So if I was just out trying to, you know, be big, have a big title, I wouldn't know you guys now, because not long after the label went under, but more importantly, that would have changed my destiny had I been, you know, just seeking success.
All right. So, you know, you talked about how the car crash hit you at 90% impact. Well, you was going at 90 miles per hour hitting a tree. Like, with everything that's coming over your head, you say you was thinking about your family, you was thinking about the situations that you was placed through. Through all of that, what do you think reigned the most important to you that when you survived, you really thank God for?
My time. Ultimately, the most valuable thing that we're given is time. How you spend it, and who you choose to spend it with. So on the other side, I'm very particular of who I spend my time with, because everyone can't have it. That's a gift. Spending time with people, talking to them, texting them, calling them, that's a gift. And ultimately, you know, now that I know what my intentions and my purpose is, I'm not gonna waste my time, because, right, it's finite. So you can't just use it up and give it to any and everybody. And that was very valuable, as I stated. You know, did I spend enough time with my family and friends? No, I didn't. So on this side of it, that's very important. You know, you can't work 2 plan A's and think about the distribution of time is proper. So I got another chance to do that. Hence why I'm, here with you guys, right? Doing it differently because this is valuable to me. This is important, right? The conversation is needed, as well as if it can change one person's life, then it's beneficial. So that's how I live.
You mentioned, I think, Orangeburg, South Carolina?
Yeah, Orangeburg, Now, you found that. I didn't mention it. Yeah, I did. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
But it got me thinking, I'm a Southerner, so could you talk more about the South and the role it played then in your life? Did you spend a lot of time there?
That's a great question. Absolutely. We used to go to the Carolinas in the summer. It was amazing. Every Friday, when school ended, my father would take us 13-hour drive down to South Carolina. So school ended on Monday, we leave on that Friday. If it ended on Friday, we left Friday night. But we was gone, they drop us off for the summer. But there was a lot of lessons that I learned down there, feeding pigs and hogs and, the things that most northerner city kids don't get the opportunity to do. I saw watermelons, and it was an interesting, fascinating moment while doing that during the summer because it didn't matter. Everybody came up to you and said, boy, how much is a watermelon? Male, female, black, white. So it was just the meaning. And I realized I didn't want that, but it opened my mind and gave me perspective on what I really didn't want and how I wanted to affect, change. And going down south was probably my first negotiation because I had a paper route. And so that year, when it was time to go, I had to say to my dad, if I leave, with a paper route, it's only temporary. You can't just, I'll be back. Somebody else is gonna get it. And I said, Dad, went through the whole cycle. If I lose it, I'm not gonna be able to, And he was like, all right, you can stay. So that's when I realized I could sell, because my father was mean, hard, just mean. You gonna do what I say, when I say, how I say, why I say, kind of guy. So when I got that, I was like, oh, I can do this. I can sell, yes.
So, as you know, you had the gift of gab, and you felt like you could sell water to a whale and everything, So
I still an Eskimo.
So, going into the music business, how would you say your sales positions from your previous work experiences played a role in becoming senior vice president and multiple other?
Confidence, man. I mean, what sales positions do is that you don't take no personal. People get mad when they get to know. And my first job was college radio promotions. So for you guys who don't know what radio promotion people are, I don't know how much radio you listen to, but the reason why you hear a record over and over and over again, there's somebody from a record label that sits with the person at your station and pitches the music. Now, the daunting task is there are only 4 slots that they change. So the cycle of music, that's why it's always, right? It's programmed music, right? So those 3 slots, 4 slots, 5 slots, you have every major label vying for those slots, every independent vying for those slots. So getting that is a big thing. It's a big accomplishment. So, realizing what sales has done in stand-up, is no different. Confidence, standing, talking to whether this same conversation would just be with him or with 5,000 people, because it's about how you give what you want the people to receive.
What are some other things, you mentioned comedy, that you learned from your time as a comedian that you later used in the business world?
Social skills. This is a polite audience, but I wouldn't have a problem just going and having a one-on-one dialogue with somebody from the stage, right? It's the comfort level, making sure that people are equally engaged in you and that they experience you. So when you're in the C-suite, it's about disarmament, right? It's about making people feel comfortable. It's not about how you're perceived, it's how you want the room to perceive you and you to perceive them, and that we can now figure out what's the best opportunity for everything. So comedy allowed me to do that, you know? Talk one-on-one in a full room, or talk one-on-one, but most importantly, understanding what needs to be accomplished in the conversation. So confidence, as I said, you know, I went to my first real job interview with an empty briefcase because I wanted to look like I knew what I was doing, right? You know, you see them in magazines, on TV, they just have briefcase. Probably 90% of the people don't have nothing in their briefcase, right? But, you know, that was my confidence thing.
Well, I think we're about out of time, but I wanted to thank you again for coming down to U of A and spending time with us. Please join us. Mr. Pough is going to be out here selling books, and he is going to be signing them, so please join us for the book signing. But again, let's all give him another hand of applause.
Thank you so much.